So hi, I'm Renee. I am currently the Head of Partnerships and Development for the CARIF Centre, which is a Caribbean African educational advancement charity based in Camden. We've since me coming on board, because originally I was hired to manage the supplementary school. So I was the coordinator of the Mandela Supplementary School, and that was in January. I actually received a promotion during COVID-19. So there's some light to these situations. And we've basically transformed the charity in a short time. It's a very small team. We've introduced new initiatives, i.e. this webinar is a new one. When I was actually hired, I mentioned doing something like this. It was to be in a physical format, to do monthly workshops, but you know, COVID-19, we adapt. So I am especially pleased that we are starting this series. We've opened up a COVID-19 platform, online resource platform, where we post up free lessons and such, and we are now running booster sessions for our Mandela Supplementary School remotely as well. We do offer advocacy services. We are reaching out into many different areas. We've connected with a lot of organizations. That is heavily a part of my role, being partnerships and development. So I do love it, because I would say it's a skill of mine. That's how I'm lucky enough to have you all here. And yeah, I have also recently become a trustee for Action Break Silence, which is a gender-based violence program. It's based here in South Africa, and we are now opening in India. So that's extremely exciting. I am the youth specialist and BAME advisor, which I'm constantly always asked, oh, is that not tokenism? But no, I was very happy to take up those roles, because that's been the focus of my 6 to 7 year career in international development. And I am very lucky to say that I got my promotion to be head of department and to become a trustee at 21. I am now 22, but again, you know, onwards and upwards, youth participation. So yeah.
You're a star, Renee. You're a star, and you're only 22. I just tweeted about this workshop, and I put with Renee, one to watch.
Thank you. But yes, if I could pass it over to, let's go with Daniel.
Yep. So hi guys, I'm Daniel. As I was saying before, I'm the director of sports for kids in Birmingham. We do workshops for young people. We go into schools and do sports and mentoring. Our mentoring is based around behavior, raising confidence, self-esteem, working out certain issues and trying to get people into better educational platforms for them as well. On our sports side, we go in and we just do multi-sport. So it's any sort of sport that we normally do in Birmingham or in nationally really. So football, basketball, handball, dodgeball, which seems to be a fan favorite. Tennis, badminton, we really kind of cover kind of the general sports. Alongside that, I kind of work for Birmingham City up here as well, doing a few football youth-based sessions as well with their Kicks program. So yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell. I've been doing this for a long time now, since I was 18 years old. I'm now 34. So my whole life has been about youth, being a youth myself, and just enjoying it really. Every day is a new challenge, so I'm having fun with it still. So yeah, that's me.
Beautiful, thank you. If we could pass on to James.
Hi there, James Cathcart. I'm currently the director of Young Voices Heard, which is a very small outfit. It's just me and the various networks, and we promote young people being heard and work with older folks to listen to them and do training and tips, so that together there's some change. I used to work at the British Youth Council for many years, and before that, the Prince's Trust. I'm also a bit of an internationalist. I've traveled around and been inspired and have lots to learn from other countries. But I was also young once, and I started in youth work, and I still do bits and bobs of mentoring with individual young people, particularly in London, and particularly with people who maybe don't otherwise get an opportunity.
Thank you very much. And then lastly on to Perry.
Hi, I'm Perry Maddox. I am currently the CEO for Restless Development, and we are an international development organization, all powered by young people. We're about the power of young people to lead change in the world. Half the world's under 30, and 9 out of 10 of them live in the developing world. And so we see young people and youth leadership as, you know, a key, if not the key asset in helping communities and countries rise to the challenges of the day. And I'm lucky enough to help them out a little bit. The young people are the heroes. I do the admin, and am inspired and learn every day. I've been doing that for most of my career in international development, and recently just created something called Just Open Leaders, which is a blog. It's just a free resource for young leaders, trying to give away the experience that I've gained, and, you know, through my platform, and the experience that I've gained through my privilege, and to kind of share coaching stories, insight for young people looking to make a difference in the charity field or in the international development field. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm really, really excited to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. So I will, to make a note, all of your organizations are listed on a kind of web links I've made, almost like a cheat sheet of organizations I've used coming up to progress me to where I am in my kind of career at my young age, and also ones that have been recommended to me by other people and ones that I've kind of vetted. So you're all posted on there because I've engaged with all of your content and I love it. So thank you very much. So I have a few questions which I think have plagued myself, and I've seen it plague many different people. Myself, I can say I've come from, as would be regarded as a disadvantaged background, you know, unfortunately also BAME under the token and such. I've you know, experienced a lot of the hurdles, but I do believe that the hurdles youth encounter are not just for those of disadvantaged backgrounds. So one key question I have to ask you guys would be, how do we transition from youth opportunities to permanent roles within the kind of development sector?
Growing up, I always wanted to go for what I wanted to do. So me personally, football, singing, dancing, anything that was entertainment or that I enjoyed, I said, that's what I want to do full time. So I kind of pursued that. I think the way we kind of, if we allow young people to be themselves and put them in the fields where they're comfortable, I think we should understand that that's where we need to push them to. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's just kind of trusting young people that we have around us. I mean, we all work with young people. We all see what they can do. I think with our help, guiding them in the right direction, we can definitely raise a great generation to do great things better than what we can do, to be quite honest. So I think that's where we need to be.
Thank you.
My kind of suggestions are sort of strategic, you know, what needs to happen to society. And I'm thinking of three groups of people. One, the older folks, or those not necessarily all older, but have got power, privilege, and make the opportunities, is they need to make space, who are allies of young people coming through. It's not enough to say, well done, young people, you know, you're great. We need to actively make opportunities and space and welcome them in. The second group of people are those, maybe, I don't know what age, maybe in their 20s, who've maybe caught a break in the last 10 years. Renee, you're a great example, but others like you, is that we mustn't forget those coming behind. And there's a phrase I've come across in the States, they say, send the elevator back down, or send the lift back down. So when you've made it, and sometimes people say to me, James, oh, thanks for, you know, you did some voluntary work. And I say to them, well, all I would say to you is, when you're as old as me, you know, hold the door open for a couple of other people, take the phone call when a young person rings you. Just remember, you know, and pass it on. So send the elevator back down. And to the young people themselves is walk through the door. Don't sit still. Do something. And now, whether that's, you know, you're admiring a football team and say, oh, I wish I could do that, is try and get on the team. Whatever the opportunity is, get up. Even if you're stood on the sidelines and you're watching the game and you can't get in, pick a ball up and start kicking it up and down in the sideline. Get the attention of the coach. And I'm using that kind of as a metaphor. People say, if you're not in the game, you can't win it. Some people are excluded from the game. And I'd say, well, maybe you need to build your own pitch and start kicking the ball to each other. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. You won't be the only one. And if people won't let you on their team, see if you can form a team of your own. Now, if those three things all work together, then maybe at a time in the future, there'll be a bit more equal opportunity. Now, that's not very, I'm sorry, that's not very specific tips, but that's a kind of general thing to start the ball rolling.
Definitely, no, I agree. I think space makers are equally important as change makers and a lot more powerful. We definitely do need them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both. I think it's a little bit about audience. You know, who are we speaking to? You know, the people running these organizations or making hires or kind of holding the gate, as it were. You know, there is we have to understand. We have to remind ourselves that, you know, strength comes in and from diversity, and age is a diversity that we need to focus on much as any other. And they work best when they're in partnership. You know, it's not youth at the expense of older people, and it shouldn't be the other way around. And how do we facilitate those kind of engagements? How do we ask ourselves hard questions and look at our team sheet and look at our volunteer sheet and look at our talent pipeline and go, how does that actually look? And face into some hard realities, because nobody's talent pipeline looks as equitable as it should. You know, not nobody, but most probably not. And youth, and then come in and ask, so what do young people bring to the party? Because you need both young people and experienced people in organizations usually. And when you think about what young people bring, then encourage yourself probably to select in a different way. You know, so many young professionals, and I know the feeling, I remember it. And I hear it every day. You know, I can't get a job because everyone wants me to have 3 years of experience, but I can't get 3 years of experience because I don't have the money to volunteer and give my time away. Thank you. And there's a catch-22 in that kind of process. And I think we have to, you know, the key is to kind of come back and go, well, what am I offering there for? And one of the biggest things young people offer is potential. And, you know, that is tremendous. And with the right organization, now a stodgy kind of tired organization isn't necessarily going to hire for potential, but kind of an up and coming or a growth kind of space organization or somewhere that's a bit more entrepreneurial will value the ability, or should value the ability, to take someone who's clearly talented and to be able to grow with them, because the organization, the business, the institution grows together. And I think, you know, you put all that together, and that interview should not look the same. You know, if you're hiring somebody, you know, a seasoned finance director with 15 years of experience, well, that's a pretty straightforward interview, right? You should not hire an entry-level role for a young person who could be your next superstar the same way. You don't ask the same questions. You don't advertise the same kind of way. And young leaders on the other side need to think about what are they selling, you know, and how do you convey that potential, but also kind of tick the experience fear box that employer might have. You know, they might be really excited about your potential. They just want to know that you're going to be able to do the job in the meantime. And I think that kind of thinking about the other party's need and thinking about what young people offer can kind of help to open the conversation.
Definitely. I definitely agree. I would say firsthand I've experienced that. It is the huge, it's catch-22 that there is. It's always, we want experience, but we're not going to give you the ability to even do the entry level role because we want experience, but then there's no way to get the experience. But I believe that there should be a restructuring of interviewing for youth, especially those who may have volunteered within their industry for many years. I feel like there could be a different approach, because voluntary work is still work, it's still experience. And unfortunately, it's undermined a lot. But in a lot of voluntary roles I've worked, I end up doing more than in my paid roles, because you're paid to work a certain amount, whereas with voluntary, it's in aid, it's in gift. But yeah, I think that leads nicely on to my next question, which is, how can we prevent age discrimination in the workforce?
I mean, first of all, you start talking about it. You call a spade a spade. You know, I think this is where leaders have. I think we call a spade, and you know, leaders have to talk about diversity and inclusion in their workforces and their workplaces. If you're not getting it from the top, then it's going to be undermined at some stage. There's a lot of structural stuff you can do in terms of how you structure interviews, in terms of how you remove affinity bias and in the selection process, all that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, as leaders, we have to tell people that this matters. This matters to the point of, I'm willing to pay more for it, thank you. I'm willing to go through longer processes. I'm willing to rethink the easy kind of selection process I have. I'm willing to challenge my HR team when they present me a pool of candidates that doesn't have sufficient age diversity within it. Basically, I'm willing to make it uncomfortable because it matters that much to us as an organization. It's not all on leaders, but I think if leaders don't do it, you're going to have a huge barrier.
I agree with what Perry said, and just adding a couple of other things is there is a tendency that young people join the workforce initially as volunteers, and almost taken for granted. It's like, well, to get your foot on the work ladder, you should be willing to volunteer. Don't expect to get paid. And I notice particularly in this sector, when we're listening to young people as advisors or they join forums or something, there's an assumption of it's voluntary. And I think there is an obligation or responsibility to value young people by paying them. So and there have been various campaigns, things like campaigning against unpaid internships, for example. Another campaign for equal pay for equal work. So having different minimum wage levels, I think, is wrong. If two people are brushing the same corridor, so I think there's some campaigning that needs to be done by people. I mean, it's been going on for a while. We know we talk about people who have lack of experience, but you can't replace the experience of being young, and that was what I was wanting to have. And there's a value attached to that. And so I would like to see more young people on boards, influencing organizations and valuing their workforce. I do think it's a bit of a mind decline, but mind shouldn't put us off attempting to get up there. Do it one step at a time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, James. And as I said before, like, my whole background has been youth. I've worked with youth, I've been a youth myself. And I really feel that it's important that, we encourage them to be the next people or the next us, if I say. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for some of the people who gave me a chance. Do you know what I mean? At the young age I was. So it's very fortunate that I had those people around me that saw the potential in me, that says, you know what, I want you to come on board, and maybe you're not good in this area, but let's skill you up in that area to help you and move you forward. And that's one of the things that I always say, whatever program I'm doing, whatever young people I'm speaking to or young person I'm speaking to, I always encourage them to say, whatever skill you haven't got, let's work it out, speak to each other, speak to the right people, put the right people around you. I never once say, you're not ready for that now. I think it's important that we kind of change our whole way we speak to young people and not make them feel like, just because they're a certain age, they have to do certain things. As everyone says, work experience is good, but sometimes throwing them into the deep end, but helping them at the same time, I think they get a better understanding of where they are at the same time as well. So yeah, I would never discriminate a young person from, being in my shoes. I really want to help them. So.
And I would say, just to chime in, and this is a block I often encounter, unfortunately, even still, considering the titles and the experience I have, is the fact that because the majority of my experience has been as a youth, if not all, they invalidate my experience. And I always say experience is experience. It doesn't matter if it was 6 years between I was 18 and 24 or 6 years between I was 50 and 56. Experience is experience. If I've held the roles and if I'm capable for the position, we need to learn to identify these things. Because at the end of the day, if somebody didn't take the chance on me, I would not be sat here at 22, well, at 21 when I got the role as head of partnerships and development, or being a trustee of a charity.
I mean, and part of this too, Renee, is for young people. I mean, the trap is that you're working so hard to get that first job or that first role or whatever it might be. And let's be honest, the playing field stacked against you, in early on. It's really hard. And as a result, there's a temptation to reach and to go for any job. And, if somebody, and what I say to a lot of our young team is like, look, if somebody's, not going to treat your experience gain between 18 and 24 as equally valid, do you want to work with them? Because anything that's going to be day in, day out. And sometimes we don't have the luxury. We just need to take the job and pay the bills. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Definitely nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes, that what James is saying, this notion that, like, youth is the skill, right? Youth is, one of our big things, we always love it when somebody says young people are leaders tomorrow, and we smack our hands down and go, really? Would you say that about half the world that are women? Because half the world's young. You want to wait? You want to wait 10 years? Or you want to do it now? Young people can lead now. And why? Because youth is a skill, and lived experience is just as valid, if not more valid, than work experience. You know, and you know what is that lived experience that you have coming from wherever a young person's coming from that can help an organization? And you've got to put that last phrase on it. It's not just I have great experience; it's experience that can help you. Thanks. Because I mean, and it's really funny. I mean, our whole deal at Restless Development is youth leadership. And so we have young trustees on all of our global different boards around the world and all that kind of stuff. A couple of years ago, we needed to re-recruit. We had a couple of young trustees move on to different kind of jobs, and they left. And we're recruiting our young trustees. And I mean, and again, this is our specialty. So when we got it wrong, the point is, you know, how does that, you know, it happens to everybody. But we recruited, and you know, when you look for a board, you look down your kind of skill matrix. You go, we need legal, we need finance, we need HR, whatever your kind of skills matrix might be on a board. And we knew we needed young people as well. And we tried to get both. And so we went out and ran a recruitment looking for young legal, I think it was, and young something else, like fundraising, let's call it. And we had 2 failed recruitments. And we looked in the mirror and we went, well, why did we do that? Youth is the skill that we're recruiting for in our young trustees, right? And if they happen to be legal, fantastic, right? But we don't recruit a legal trustee and hope that she can do a little bit of HR, right? And I think that's, you know, and that's what we do for a living. And we had that little aha moment. And so, you know, as we, you know, reach out to other employers, I think helping them to understand that youth and that current understanding potential, right? Not the I'll be ready in 10 years, but that current understanding potential is quite dynamic in a workforce, and it does good things for us. So yeah, I just agree.
And just to finish up on that topic of how to get on the employment ladder and have a bit of agency, equal opportunity, I'm very aware that while we're talking about it, the reality in a lot of the world is it's not people like us in the panel that are the majority of employers. You know, if you were applying for jobs with us, we'd be very sympathetic. But a lot of folks are still in the old way of having a stereotype about young people. So you have to sell yourself and master your own future. And I'll send you the link, Renee, afterwards. You can share it. But I work with another organization which does workshops for young people, and it's called Mastering My Future, just looking at the sheet. And it's a whole bunch of different tips. They're free. They're Zoom. They've kind of mushroomed a bit because of the COVID. Everybody's on Zoom. And I checked out before this podcast workshop if it was okay. And they start on the 10th of August. I'll send you the link. They're by an organization called 2 to 3 Degrees, 2-3 Degrees. And I checked if it was okay for, you know, people in London. Can they join in? And that was very much about bridging the gap between, okay, that's the theory. How do we get ourselves confident, trying, pushing the door? What are some of those skills? To get, you know, when we get before an employer, that they'll hear what we've got to say.
Definitely. And I think that really ties into something that's key, and it's even key for me. As we identified, I'm getting into the latter side of youth. And I'm very, very, very intent on space making, as it were, hence why I did come up with the idea of this webinar type podcast thing. But the question is, how do we create / enable space makers, change makers, being the youth, particularly those who haven't yet held a kind of full-time role within the field that they're aspiring to, those who might be going via the routes of volunteering, campaigning and such. How do we create and enable space makers, which are currently U3 and which I am transitioning into?
I think that's where, I mean, it kind of almost like LinkedIn for young people. You know, where can people show their skills so that recruiters can find them? I'm not sure if there is a LinkedIn for young people. I'm not sure. I've seen increasingly more young people putting up their profiles on LinkedIn. And whenever someone contacts me, I always want to see a bit more about the person, whether they're on Twitter and they're a campaigner. If I want to engage with them, I'll go and see if they've got a profile somewhere. We can try and campaign for nationally to employers and to government and so on. And I think in the year ahead with COVID recession, there's going to be a lot more unemployment for young people, and there's going to be some investment, I hope, in how can we get young people back into the labour market. So there's an opportunity for those of us that can to try and influence and do things differently than the last time there was a big recession and young people had very high rates of unemployment. And I was just picking up on a point that Perry made earlier about being creative, employers being creative about how they recruit, how they interview those skills and talents. So I think there's something about, as young people, using the digital worlds to be creative at selling ourselves. So instead of waiting for someone to create the LinkedIn youth, I hope some entrepreneur out there says, now I'm going to be the first one to create that site and can try and connect people. I know, for example, a very tiny illustration was those that want to influence organizations. And Perry, you made the example of young people joining a board of trustees, but there's an organization called the Young Trustee Movement, which Renee, I think you're part of that.
Yes, I am.
That's kind of a space for both young people who want to be on a board, allies of young people, organizations who want to recruit young people, and trainers, and all four join with an equal status and a bit of matchmaking, sharing tips, trainers. And I quite like that model. It's a kind of space, and I'd love to see more of those. I don't know if there's a jargon word for it, but more of that space. Whereas the old-fashioned one, you go into the job center, you feel quite small, and there's this kind of power thing, and you're trying to get up and in and make your way to find a job. Maybe that's something.
The Young Trustees movement, it is something I love. I think it was maybe a day or two after joining with them and engaging on their online kind of social media type platform, I was connected with the company that the charity I became a trustee for, which was, quite crazy and amazing because only about 3% of trustees are under the age of 30 in the UK currently. And that's what the movement is set up to kind of rectify. And like I said, I was very fortunate to be connected with Action Break Silence, which is a gender-based charity. We also are offering, now moving forward, I think in 2021, because of COVID, we'll be offering paid active citizenship kind of opportunities. So now people, much like myself, who are trying to get in, would be able to work the same kind of roles and have the same kind of experience, but paid, which I believe needs to be the shift. We need to offer more paid examples of work for youth. But they will be included in the cheat sheet that would be distributed at the end of the call. We'll send it out to all participants and the recording too. But yes, would anybody else like to chime in on how do we create space makers to engage change makers, being the youth?
Yeah, I definitely agree with James. As he says in the question, like, they're change makers, and if we've got the ability to make room for them, I feel that we should. If it's a paid working job, do it. Let them know there's going to be value in it, in moving up in whatever field it's going to be, but something to motivate them as well. I don't think we should just let them stand still in where they are. I think we should be the ones to make that room for them. I mean, me personally, I'm not sure about James and Perry as well, but if there's a young person coming on board with myself, I want to push them to be probably the director of Sports for Kids, where I can say, you know what, maybe now I need to sit back, and because I'm not going to be doing sports forever. I'm 34 now, so it's not like I want to be in the same field and doing the same thing. I want to make that room for them to kind of let them have an experience, enjoy their time. Because I've had my fun with it, and I know if they come on board and they enjoy it, then they're going to feel the same way. So I don't really want to hinder them and have to make them take a back seat and fend for themselves. I'm here to help. And that's one of the reasons why Sports for Kids as a family business will set up to kind of push them in that direction as well.
That totally resonates. I mean, I always kind of talk to our team, and I'm like, you want 2 or 3 people pushing you out of your chair in the nicest and friendliest of ways. You want 2 or 3 people hungry and are ready. Not just because it's nice to support your leaders, but that's like a business continuity issue. If we as leaders can't step away from our job and somebody come in and do it better, then we've failed, I think. And I think that kind of, if you inject that kind of dynamic approach, that will filter down to the teams as well. But I also think, Renee, I think this kind of where you are in your career, how you're describing, which I think is hilarious that you describe yourself as exiting youth, but it's great. I know, I'm joking. I love it. I think that's a really critical group, and it doesn't always work. I mean, my advice would be, there's 2 things, like avoid the trap. And I see this a lot in our organization, actually. We hire on potential. So we don't hire based on the years of experience. We hire on, how quickly do we think you can learn and all that kind of good stuff. And so, we do hire very young compared to kind of our peers in our sector. And, what you'll find, and when I see it, and it's country, globally, it's different countries, 4 or 5 years later, that former young person who's hired on potential is hiring their successor, or they've grown and they're moving from coordinator, manager, director. And guess what? They're expecting full 5 years of experience in a master's, right? And something's happened along the way where they've gotten so good at their job, and it's not like there's nothing bad there, but they've got really good at their job, and then they go, well, the way to do this job is to have the experience that I now have. And they kind of get blind to the experience they've gained in the last couple of years of that role and end up kind of committing the same mistake that is often made against young people. And so I think, one is just make sure we avoid that trap and go, look, I was hired on potential, so therefore I need to make sure somebody else can be too. And then the second one that I think is really, really helpful is, I don't know what the right word is, but kind of acting as a navigator, as a guide for young people. I don't believe there's any more disproportionately valued skill in careers than the skill of getting a job. It's a complete parlor trick to write a good CV and to do a good interview, right? It has almost no indication on whether or not you'll be able to do your job well at all. We might as well say go cook pancakes, and the best person who cook the pancakes is going to get the job, right? It's not quite that arbitrary, but the skill of getting a job makes a huge difference in your career, way more than if you're good at managing finance or people or programs or whatever it might be. And for young leaders coming in, it's massively intimidating. Not only are they looking at that kind of number of years experience that I may or may not have, but they're also looking and going, well, that panel doesn't look like me. There's interviewing, and this whole setup doesn't quite seem comfortable, and it's not designed to pull the best out of me. It's designed to eliminate me. And that can be really, really intimidating, really, really off-putting. And as a result, we don't get the best out of our candidates. So we risk not getting the best candidates. And where somebody who is kind of in that transition stage, young enough to still remember, although I think all people can be young enough to still remember, I like to tell myself, to be that kind of navigator, to go, look, what they might be looking for is this. And the best way and think about audience here in that. And actually that thing is something they always say, and that doesn't mean anything. And, how can we be the navigators to, that next group, those 4 or 5 people that you're bringing in, to kind of make the game a little bit more fair. Because if not, it's down to who went to the school that taught you how to interview and who went to that organization that teaches you how to write a CV. And we know that's going to end up with a more privileged and a more kind of, already advantaged group.
I read an article on recently from a recruitment agency giving tips for people doing digital interviews, because Perry was just talking about those kind of that trick of getting through the interview. And of course, we're moving into a lot more people doing digital interviews. So I'll send you a link about it. I thought it was really good, some of the advice in it. And I've reposted it, particularly for young people who were looking for work, because it's giving you an insight onto the other side of the table and what they're looking for. And I think one of the things organizations can do to help empower young people get into employment is to do practice interviews and then give people feedback. And that's very sort of a managed thing. But I wanted to go back to a point that Daniel made earlier, I thought was so positive, and I think Perry, you echoed it, about giving feedback to young people coming through about what we see in you, in them, what they could be. So it's almost like I can see you doing my job one day. And we quite often think it, but we don't always tell it to young people. When I think about why did I apply for more senior jobs and keep trying, it was usually, I could remember a little voice of one of my mentors or somebody I respected saying to me, "Oh, James, you could be a chief executive one day." And I thought, "You're joking." And I thought, actually, do they know something I don't? Do they see something in me that I can't? And
Yeah.
then when I eventually did it and I was able to look back, and I thought, I'm so grateful for that person for envisioning me being more than what I think I am. And all of us can do that. Doesn't cost any money to do that. And we'll all be a lot better off, I think. Oh, look, from Natasha. So, hi, Natasha. I don't know how old you are, but we're guessing as to where everybody is on their journey at the moment. Back to you,
I
Renee.
definitely agree. I definitely agree. I have to be grateful, especially for you, Perry, and you, James, who have taken time out and actually given me words of wisdom. It's been very helpful. Perry, I would definitely say that you pushed me to go for the job with the Carif Centre after our conversation. And, you know, I was blessed enough to be promoted, and now I'm head of department. And that's something that is quite considerable to put on your CV of achieving at 21. And James, definitely, it's been nothing but a pleasure connecting with you, and you've pushed me to reach out to so many people. And because of you, I've gotten great advice, which again, it's just going to help push me in my career. And we were fortunate to meet because of, well, the two of you. So James, with you, it was via the Young Trustees movement and, you know, pushing out and connecting with you. And Perry, I was lucky enough to meet you at the Youth Hack, it was Restless Development. They set up this event for us to kind of discuss youth issues and better ways to engage youth. And one thing I really took away from it that Perry said himself was the best way to create youth leaders is by letting youth lead. And that stuck with me. And I've actually applied that to the way I've pushed forward in my career. And it's definitely, as we've highlighted throughout this kind of webinar, it's not easy. There are a lot of hurdles, but the tenacity of the young person does need to be met with space makers. And I do think that it's very key that we concentrate, because I am, like I always say, I'm getting to the latter side of youth. 22, I'm still well within youth in most countries. Unfortunately, though, when, you know, applying for roles and stuff, they would assume that I would be going for voluntary roles. But, you know, evidently I don't need to be if I could be head of department and I could be a non-executive director of a separate charity and organization. And these are the key problems we have. So then for myself, I'm still struggling on ways to make space, because I've now started to make it, but there's still a long way to go. And I don't necessarily have the power behind me that I wish I could have to open doors. And I do think it's very important that we almost support us aspiring change and space makers as well as the change makers, because for many, I'm still a change maker. I am still youth and I am still budding on my career.
Going back to your point about people have given you advice, so turning that on its head, if you're one of the folks listening to us today, or you're younger, is to do what Renee did, is to reach out. If you see somebody in a job that you'd like to do one day, send them an email. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They don't answer the email. The best that they can, and if you say, look, one day I'd like to do your job, I'm 16 years old, have you got any tips? Now, when I get an email like that, you know, I'll reply. You know, it's like, and I would say to people, reach out. And if I don't know the answer, and I think in your case, when you asked me, Renee, I introduced you to somebody. So if I don't know somebody, I know someone who might know the answer, so contact them. I can't make them reply either, but at least if you try, they might. And I think that's where my advice to anybody looking is to start reaching out. You know, if you want to be, whatever the career is, a pilot or the next, what was it, Perry, Chief Executive of Restless Development, send an email and say, well, where's your journey? And Perry might say, well, actually, I've got, what did you call it at the beginning of the blog? Just Open Leaders. So sign up to my blog. There's loads of tips and advice. So that's, you know, that's just, I'm sure, Daniel, you know, you get, I don't know, I don't want to set you up to get loads of emails, but I think that we don't think they'll reply. But I've learned to be really cheeky. I'll write to anybody. I'll write to the Queen. I'll write to the Prime Minister. I do. Marcus Rashford, Marcus, any tips, please? The one person I've never written to, because I feel so intimidated, is Barack Obama. But he runs a foundation in the States to support young people in Listen to Voice. So I need to get around to, they don't always reply, but at least I'm not left wondering what they might have.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more useful than asking for their autograph, to ask them for some tips for the journey.
Definitely.
Yeah, I welcome them, the emails and stuff. I think it's a positive. If I can help someone to move to the next level, I feel like I've made an achievement myself. I feel like that's it. I've made it myself. So if I can help someone to get to the next level of where they need to be, that's a job done for me.
So thank you everybody for your time. I will be releasing a cheat sheet with all the links that have been mentioned during this call. It will come along shortly, probably by next week. I will also listen back to the recording and kind of type up some notes that I can share with all of you participants so that you'll be able to refer back. And we'll also release the actual video recording. So if you want to share, listen back to what you have missed. But again, thank you everyone for joining. I wish you the best of luck. And please, if you're young, just reach out, because there's plenty of things that didn't amount to much for me, but I can definitely see how it's led me on to the next opportunity. Sometimes you only do a job or you only volunteer somewhere to meet the key specific person that will further you. So keep an open mind and just keep trying. And for anybody who's older, keep your mind open and please recognize potential. Thank you, everybody.